Hi! In this tutorial we are going to demonstrate the working and the use of mock servers in vREST. Mock server is one of the most powerful features of vREST. Mock server basically helps one to mock the HTTP requests in vREST. This will speed up your web development at a very fast pace. Front-end team don't have to depend on the back-end team. That means they don't have to wait for the APIs to be implemented by the back-end team. They can directly use the API mocks. Testing team can also start their testing work before the development using API mocks. So mock server removes the dependencies among teams and is very helpful in making parallel development. Apart from this, mock server is also very useful while creating a demo application or proof of concept applications without backend. If you are not using mock server right now, then use it right now. This will make a drastic change in your current development seed. Let's define our first API mock. To define API mocks, simply go to the mock server tab. Now click on New button to create a new API mock. Let's mock our view contact API of the contacts application. Here we will need to fill the API mock URL path. Now we need to add a summary and then mention the method that is being used, and then click on Save button to save this API mock. As you can see that the API mock has been created. We just need to set the API response body and response headers of this API mock. Let's first set the response body of this API mock. We have used the variable contact ID in the response body. The value of this variable can be extracted from the request URL automatically by mock server. Now let's set the response headers as well for this API mock. Our API mock is ready, as this is a GET request. So let's try out this mock request in another browser tab. Just copy the mock URL from the header. And now open another browser tab. Paste the copied API mock URL here and replace the contact ID variable with say 1. So this is our mock response which we just created. Notice that the _ID property is set to 1, which we passed as the contact ID via URL. Now change the contact ID from 1 to 2 and press enter. Notice the _ID property in the response. You may even create multiple mocks of the same API based on the request parameters or body. Let's look at this right now. Now suppose this view contact API accepts a query parameter, say PARAM1, and we want the mock server to respond an error response if the value of this parameter is bad value. Otherwise, add the value in our earlier response. Then we can define two API mocks. Just copy and paste the API mock to make a duplicate. Now in the first API mock, we will add a request parameter, say param1, and we can set the value as bad value. We need to make this parameter required and check the match value as well. Let's understand the meaning of these two columns. If required column is ticked, then the mock server checks whether the parameter exists in the incoming request. And if the required column is not ticked, then the mock server doesn't care about the existence of that parameter. If match value column is ticked, then mock server also checks the value of the parameter in the incoming request. And if the value doesn't match, it filters out the specified API mock. Now, in response, we can set the status code to 400 and the response body to this. Let's save this response body and try out this in another browser window. First, provide the value of param1 as bad value. As you can see that the mock server is returning the error response. Now let's change the param1 value to good value. As you can see that the mock server is returning our earlier mock API response. Now suppose we want the value of param1 into our API response as well. Then we may need to tweak our second API mock. To use the value of parameter param1 in the response, we first need to define this parameter in second API mock as we did in our first API mock. Now in the value column, use variables say param1 value. That's it. Now in the response, we may add another key say param1 colon param1 value like this and then save this response body. In this browser tab, just refresh the page. As you can see that the param1 has been added in the API response and its value is dynamically set from the request URL by mock server. In this way, vREST provides powerful mock server capability. Now let's see how you may perform test-driven development using mock servers. Just go to the test cases tab. As you may see that we have already created 2 test cases for our API mocks. One test case validates the error condition when param1 value is bad value, and the second test case validates the success condition. As you can see that we are checking the status code 400 and we are checking the error response of the API. Similarly, in the second test case, as you can see that we are checking the status code 200 and we are checking the success response of the API. Let's execute these test cases. Both the test cases are passing. In this way, you may perform REST API testing without hitting the actual server. These test cases are sending requests to the mock server instead of the actual server. So you may perform test-driven development. We recommend you to use mock server to take your development to the next level and remove dependencies among teams. If you want to know more about mock server, then go to the user guide of vREST and visit section mock server.